Hey, Trailblazers. This is your host, Jason. And as you know, one thing we care most about on the Trailblazing Texas podcast is supporting small businesses that support our outdoor community. Angry Pica Food Company is exactly that. Family-driven, community-focused, and committed to fueling adventures the right way. So please check them out. They have wonderful meals and a new product, coffee, which I've tested and it's spectacular. So give them a look at angrypicafood.com. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas Podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and today's guest is coming to us. I don't know you can get any more West Texas than where they're located, but coming to us from the Franklin Mountain State Park, we have Interpretive Ranger Lydia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, so am I. I think we talked about it a second ago. This is one of the state parks that was really on my radar to have you on, as well as Big Bend Ranch State Park. So, man, I'm excited for this one. So, are you ready to talk about everything there is to talk about concerning Franklin Mountain State Park?
I am ready.
All right. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with the podcast, but the listeners know what's coming. I have a lightning round.
Okay.
These are questions that you haven't seen. It's one of my favorite segments of the podcast, as well as the listeners. And what's exciting about this are the questions are not too hard, and you are the second ranger to be on the podcast that are going to answer these questions from your peers. So other rangers or site superintendents have submitted questions, and let's get rolling. So the very first question, I don't know why Eric at Lake Livingston State Park wanted to throw in some controversy.
Starting off strong.
Yes. So are you ready for this one?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, I'm going to make it even more controversial and say I'm not really into either.
Oh, all right. Hey, but that's an answer. That's okay. That's okay. All right. We'll go with that.
I'm more of a fantasy girl than a sci-fi person.
All right. Love it. Nikki, the superintendent at Lake Brownwood State Park, had this question. If you had to work at a different state park for just one day.
Oh, I only get one day?
Just one day.
Ooh. Well, Big Bend is amazing, so I'll go with Big Bend.
Okay. So Andrew, the Interpretive Ranger at Inks Lake, said if money was not an issue, what is one guest amenity or activity you would include in your park?
Well, so I think the one I get the most requests for is a zip line.
Oh.
Although that's more of that goes beyond just a money issue, and very much into some safety issues as well.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we can go with zip line. That would be exciting.
I normally get this request when we're like at the top of a peak and they're like, wait, we have to go back down.
Mm-hmm.
Can't I just like take an escalator or zip line or, yep. I'm like, no, sorry.
Yep, you got to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Craig, superintendent at Abilene State Park. I love this question. It's what work-related accomplishment are you most proud of?
Work-related thing that I'm most proud of. You know what? I designed a junior ranger booklet for Franklin Mountain State Park a while back that's specific to Franklin Mountain State Park. And that was a lot of fun to make. And I'm really proud that we have it. Most parks don't have a site-specific junior ranger program. And that one was fun to do. And I like how it came out. So that's something I'm proud of.
All right, love it. All right. Also, Craig, he gave a bunch of questions. We're gonna have two from him on this episode. I love this question. Is what is the most Texas thing you've seen at your state park?
The most Texas thing I've seen at my state park. So
Maybe like hikers with cowboy hats or...
Yeah, so the thing is, we don't get as much of that sort of stuff as some of the other parts of Texas.
Yeah.
We're kind of more like New Mexico than other parts of
Okay.
Texas. I would say having a group of guys huddled around a rattlesnake.
I love it. That is acceptable. All right, next question's from Hannah in Enchanted Rock, the Interpretive Ranger there. What is the most peaceful place in your park?
The most peaceful place, I'd say one of the places I love to just sit at quietly would be West Cottonwood Springs. And then, because you've got the cottonwood leaves overhead, it's just kind of rustling quietly. If you hit it at just the right time of year, which is like 1 week in like March-ish, it'll be covered in cherry blossoms. Actually, I think they're plum blossoms. Sorry, plum blossoms. But yeah, the little white flowers, and it's just beautiful and quiet. And you've got the little trickle of water there. So I'd say that's the most peaceful place in the park.
Nice, love it. All right, Junior at Tyler State Park, the Interpretive Ranger there. His question is, what is your favorite thing about your park?
Favorites are hard. You know what I love about the park? I love the way that there's like hidden beauty out in the desert. It's not bright and loud and in your face. It's not tropical rainforest with the bright big flowers and the giant green leaves. It's little tiny things tucked away in crevices and corners.
Nice. Love it. Now we have Noah, Interpretive Ranger at Mission Tejas. His question is, when hiking at your site, which of these 4 things would you say is most important for hikers to be aware of to stay safe? Wildlife, incoming traffic, like equestrian bikers, that sort of thing, the terrain, or the weather?
I would say usually it's going to be terrain, unless we're in the rainy season, in which case you need to watch out for flash floods. But that's not very often. Most of the time it's terrain.
All right. Now these questions are for me. If Franklin Mountains had a theme song, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know.
You can pass.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to pass on that one. I can't think of anything right now. I'll keep thinking about it, and if maybe we'll come back to it.
All right. Sunrise or sunset in the park?
Sunrise.
Favorite trail view?
Has to be North Franklin Peak.
Hardest trail in the park?
Either North Franklin or Ron Coleman. They have different types of difficulties.
Most surprising wildlife sighting?
My most surprising wildlife sighting would have been one day we saw an American badger behind our maintenance yard.
Oh, wow.
Down in the wash back there.
Oh, I love that. Best month for hiking?
October.
One piece of gear you never hit the trail without?
Water. Water.
All right, I love this question. What location, restaurant in El Paso you would recommend after a hike?
We've got a lot of restaurants in El Paso. We're known for our Mexican food. So honestly, any of the Mexican restaurants, great after hike. One of the most popular ones is going to be L&J Cafe, but there's often a little bit of a line. So if you want something just like quick energy after the hike, grab and go kind of thing, right down the road from the park, there's this little kind of hole in the wall place called Lupita's Tamales. They have tamales, but they also have like burritos and stuff. So you can just get burritos. They're cheap. They're good. They fill you up.
I love it. My favorite restaurant in the world is Mom's Kitchen Express in Van Horn, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a little bitty place, and man, the food there is spectacular. So yeah, I love these little hidden gems like that. So thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next question, it's the last question, and this is another, and I'm sorry to do this to you, this is another controversy question. Best for hydration, since you spoke of water a few questions ago, water bottle or hydration bladder. And if you get it wrong, we're going to keep on going. You might get a little sad face from me, but if you get it right, you're going to get 2 thumbs up and we're still going to keep going.
I use both. I would say the hydration bladder is what. Here's the thing. I'm the kind of person who I'll start hiking and I'll kind of just I don't stop a whole lot. So the thing with the hydration bladder is I can drink while I'm walking. And so that is why I would say I mostly use the hydration bladder. However, a nice thing about water bottles, especially in the summertime, is you can freeze them and stick them in your backpack. And then, like, halfway through the hike, you've got cold water. But I always carry both.
All right. So I'm going to give you a thumbs up and a thumbs down. You need to check out Trucker Joe's water bottle sleeves. They fit on the front of your backpacks.
Okay, yeah.
And so, yeah, that's a whole nother episode about hydration,
Yep.
water bottles and water bladders that we will not get into, but check out Trucker Joe's water bottle sleeves. I have a ton of gear, as you can kind of see in the background.
Yeah.
That's the only piece of gear that's ever changed the way I hike and backpack in a positive
Really?
way. So, yeah. So check
Cool.
them out.
I'll have to check that out.
All right. So, the lightning round is my favorite part of the episode, but my close second favorite part of the episode is what we're going to get into now. Besides talking about Franklin Mountain State Park, it's really getting to know you, getting to know the rangers. I've probably had state park starting maybe about a year ago. And no matter what role you guys as a guest on the podcast have with the state park, and you all are different, but your heart and soul, it's like it's cut from a cookie cutter. What I get to experience on the episode is looking at you guys answer some of these questions and how much you care about stewardship, about service, about education, about the beautiful areas of our state. Like, you guys are all like cut from the same cloth. And it's to me really spectacular. So I love this part, kind of just to understand a little bit about you, your background, and how you got into this type of work. So kind of the first question is, how long have you worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife?
Yes, I've been working for Texas Parks and Wildlife for 7.5 years now. And I've spent all of that time at Franklin Mountains in this position. So I've spent 7.5 years now.
So what brought you to Franklin Mountains? Was it kind of just that they had an opening, or you really had a focus to land that job?
So it was kind of just they had an opening. I grew up here in El Paso for the most part. And so after finishing college, I spent a year working at an environmental education center in South Carolina. And then it was just like a 1-year thing. And so I came back home for the summer to kind of figure things out, apply to jobs, attend a friend's wedding, do all that sort of stuff. And in the meantime, while I was doing all that and I was applying for jobs, I saw the job opening here at Franklin. I was like, sure, let's apply, see what happens. And here we are, 7.5 years later.
So kind of what inspired you to get into park work?
So funny thing there. Little story about me. I remember quite distinctly. I don't remember if it was 7th or 8th grade, but it was middle school. My science teacher came up to me. Must have been like at the end of the year. We had just gotten our test results for the standardized test, which is the TAKS at the time. And I had somehow gotten a perfect score in my science exam. And
Oh, wow.
my teacher, of course, was thrilled by this. And she was like, oh my goodness, you have got to go into science. And I was like, absolutely not. I am not doing science. And the reason for that was because I had, like, in school, what had been presented to me as science was very much memorize these facts and, lab coats and, fluorescent lighting and, that sort of thing. And I was like, I'm not really interested in that. I don't really care about, accumulating facts. But the thing was, ever since I was a kid, my parents would always take us out hiking, camping. Every vacation just about was a camping trip or something like that. And I loved spending time out in the wilderness. We would go up to New Mexico a lot, spend time in the forest up there, go to City of Rocks. We went all over the place. And being outdoors was this amazing space for me. So as I went through high school, I kind of learned a little bit more about the world in general, but I especially started looking at like what are the different actual career pathways I could go in. And that's when I realized that science didn't have to just be memorizing facts and being in a lab and doing that sort of stuff. There was also
Right.
this other side to science that was just studying the outdoor world. And I started kind of looking into opportunities for going into more of the forestry route. I ended up being a little bit more generalist in my studies. I went to a small college, so they didn't have as specialized of degrees, but I got my degree in biology with an emphasis on ecology. And it was because I just loved learning more about the natural world. And, you know, I wanted to spend more time in that space. And so at the end of the day, though, it wasn't about those test scores. It was about those camping trips as a kid. That was more important for kind of determining the direction that I ended up going in. But that's what I ended up doing.
Wow, it's a wonderful story.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this question, and not word for word, but every ranger that I've asked this to, it's generally the same answer. What does a typical day look like for you at the park?
Not a thing. I'm sure that's what they all say. There's no such thing as a typical day. Every day is going to be different. A lot of times during the week, I do spend a little bit more time here in the office. I'm doing stuff like I'm reaching out to people on email. I'm scheduling things. I'm, planning events or programs, doing that sort of stuff. And then on most weekends, I'll either be helping out at the visitor center and our gift shop, or I'll be doing programs. I'll be like leading guided hikes, tours, different types of programs that we're doing. But then it all depends on the time of year and what all's going on. So sometimes during the week, I'll have extra programs. So I'll do field trips, or I'll be invited to speak in classrooms. Or next week, I've got someone has requested an orienteering class from me during the week. And so it's a mix of all sorts of stuff. I'm working with volunteers. I'm planning programs. I'm going out on a hike. I might help out with just doing some trail work, stuff like that. So it's a little bit of everything.
Nice. So what is your favorite part of your job?
I love hiking. I love going hiking. And I love taking people out on hikes who maybe haven't done a lot of hiking before, especially kiddos. I love kiddos, taking kiddos out in the park. And I love it when they see something that maybe I've seen 1,000 times and it's just like amazing to them. And their eyes light up and they're so excited. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a lizard. It's this kind of lizard. I've seen it like 10 times already
Mhm.
today, but you are just thrilled about this. And I love watching that expression that they're just enjoying it so much, especially on like field trips and stuff like that. Because the thing about field trips is you never know who's coming out.
Yeah.
Normally, if a family is coming out, they're the sort of family that wants to go hiking. On a field trip, it's just the entire class. And so some of these kids have never like left their neighborhoods before. The concept of walking on something that's not paved is weird. And so just seeing them like encounter these natural spaces for the first time and that awe and wonder, that's amazing to me.
Wonderful. I asked this next question to Nikki at Lake Brownwood, the superintendent there, and I loved her answer, and it was not shocking, but it kind of put a lot in perspective. And so the question is, do you have a favorite memory or moment during your time at the park? And so I was expecting kind of like what you said, and what, usually almost, every ranger is, it's the answer is always the joy that they get from introducing someone, whether it's fishing, hiking, whatever, to something new, and their expression, and you as a ranger know that you're impacting these people's lives in a very positive way. And her answer was similar. They had an intern ranger and they had a night sky program. As it got dark, the stars just popped and there was a bazillion of them. And the ranger that was there as the intern never saw like a true dark sky
Oh,
experience.
that's
And
cool.
so that was hers, was just witnessing that for the first time. So yeah, so
Mhm.
I love that. And you all have the same answer, that basically how you're positively impacting people, visitors, like our lives. So what is your favorite memory there at the park?
I would say so. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier briefly. I would say the first time I hiked to West Cottonwood Springs and found all of our plum trees in bloom. Normally, the spring itself is, listen, we're a desert out here.
Yep.
It's not like a swimming hole. Leave your bathing suit at home. This is a 5 foot mud puddle on a good day, you know? But there's this like thick vegetation all around. And honestly, I'd never paid a ton of attention to the lower kind of shrubs all around the spring. Obviously, you've got this big cottonwood tree, but you've got all these little shrubs. I hadn't really thought about them a whole lot. But then this one time, I actually hiked up there on my own. This was actually during 2020. So it was during the time when the park was closed. So no one else was in the park. I was recording a video so that I could put it on our webpage for people to still enjoy the park while, we were closed, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
as I hike up to the spring, I just come in, and it was the first time I'd ever seen this. All of the trees are just completely covered in these kind of white, pink plum blossoms. Completely. So, like, it's, they don't have any leaves on them yet, but it's just a forest of these beautiful flowers. And it was just this magical moment where it's quiet. You've got the water, trickling just a little bit. You come into this, you have to go up to it through this kind of narrow section, and then it opens up a little bit. And all of a sudden, you're just surrounded by all of these flowers. And it just felt so magical, like stepping
No.
into a little like fairy world for a minute. I would say that's probably a moment that would definitely stick out to me the most from my time here at the park.
Nice. I love it. So this is another, I love this question, is what is one thing about your job that would surprise most people?
Actually, I would say how much time I end up spending indoors. A lot of times, a ranger is just like outside all the time. And I love that part of my job. That's my favorite part of my job. But I do actually have to spend some time on a computer every once in a while. I have to check emails, just like everyone else. And a lot of my job does happen in my office, planning, prepping, doing research for a new program, developing materials, that sort of stuff. So I'd say probably something that I think people would be surprised about in this job is how much of it is inside, actually. I love the outdoor portion.
Yeah. So we may have touched on this a little bit, but what is the most rewarding part of working at Franklin Mountains?
I would say that, the most rewarding part about working out here, we talked a little bit about the seeing people interact with the park for the first time, but really it's just being a part of this legacy of conservation. This park is really unique. all parks are unique. And I think we'll jump more into that a little bit later. But just being a part of protecting this place and also helping people enjoy it and learn how to recreate safely and appropriately in an outdoor space. I'd say that's the most rewarding part, is just being a part of that legacy.
I just had Palo Pinto on, and I was talking to Kate, their interpretive ranger. I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you will go down in the history books as their first interpretive ranger. And she's like, yep.
Yep.
So now let's kind of start to dive. Well, first off, thank you for that. I truly enjoyed it. And now let's kind of move on to talking about the park. So for someone like me who's never been, how would you describe Franklin Mountain State Park?
Yeah, so Franklin Mountain State Park, it's rugged. It's a mountain park. We're protecting a complete Chihuahuan Desert mountain range. So you've got, all that desert terrain and, wildlife and plants and animals and all that sort of stuff. So lots of cactus, lots of rocks, lots of poke plants, but beautiful views. We've got like 120 miles of hiking and biking trails. So I'd say our big draw is going to be those trail systems. And we've got a huge diversity of trails as well. So from super easy trails to really difficult trails, we've kind of got it all. And so I would say the main thing about the park is going to be that Chihuahuan Desert mountain range, that rugged terrain, those beautiful views, and those miles of trails.
I would say there's not a ton of Texas state parks where you as a visitor, let's say you want to do hiking, backpacking, whatever, that you need to be on your A game. And I think Franklin Mountains is one of those parks that you need to, I'm not going to say that you need to be advanced in hiking and backpacking, but you need to have an idea of kind of what you're getting into. This is one of the parks that you definitely need to take serious. Not that you shouldn't take any park serious. Anytime you step on the trail, something can happen. But this is where, I definitely think the stakes raise a little bit, and you definitely need to have put in some miles, in my opinion. If you want to explore the park and kind of do maybe some of the more challenging stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And, I would say we've got a mix of opportunities for people. A lot of our visitors are coming from the city. They're just coming up for the day kind of thing. So we do get families who are coming out for the first time. Every single weekend, we've got people in the visitor center who are like, I've never been out here before. What do you do? And there are trails that we send those folks to. We've
Yeah.
got those easy kind of stroll in the parks sorts of places. But on the other side, we are a desert and we are a rugged mountain range. And so a lot of our trails, I would rate them as moderate. And sometimes we get some folks who are like, that was the most difficult thing I've ever done. And it's just, you have to be aware of your surroundings for sure. And you can't underestimate the mountain, even as an experienced hiker. It's real easy. You put one foot wrong and that rock rolls under your foot and you're down. So you definitely have to watch out for that for sure. We've had some rescues of experienced hikers who just were in the wrong place and, took the wrong step and, got carried out with their foot halfway hanging off their leg, and that does happen. On the flip side, though, unlike some place like Big Bend Ranch, where they also have that desert environment, dehydration happens fast. They have some really rugged terrain out there as well. The difference there is if you almost slice your foot out there, you're looking at hours before anyone can even get to you. Whereas we've got the, closest store is a 10-minute drive and we can get our rescue team out here much faster than somewhere more remote like Big Bend. But yeah, you definitely have to take the mountains seriously.
Yeah. And kind of going on with that is we talked a little bit about, the Guadalupe Mountains. That's my heaven on earth. I'm out there and I'm in Houston. So it's a haul for me to get out there. And I had Ranger Leah on and she says, just like Big Bend Ranch State Park, that something happens and it's 4, 6, 8 hours to get somebody out there to rescue you. If it's a serious thing and you can't kind of get out on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing. And I think with my statement earlier about this is kind of one of those parks, just like Big Bend Ranch, that, you really need to make sure you're on point. But if something does happen, you certainly got a faster response from
Yeah.
rescuers. Yeah.
We are really lucky. Here in El Paso, we have what we call COMSAR, so it's the Combined Search and Rescue Team. It's made up of firefighters, police officers, some of our rangers, and they come out here and practice, every single month, and then of course they respond to our rescues. So they're highly trained groups of volunteer responders who are part of this search and rescue team that know this mountain. And so they can get, if we know your general location, we can get to you within an hour generally and have EMTs and everything else with you, making sure everything's all right. But it's not an excuse to go out there unprepared for sure.
Exactly. So what do you think makes your park unique compared to other Texas state parks?
Yeah, so we are one of the largest urban wilderness parks in the world. And so what that means, we're let's see, over 27,000 acres now, all
Wow.
inside city limits. So we've mentioned Big Bend a couple times. They're much larger than us, but they're not inside a city. With us, we are surrounded on 3 sides by the city of El Paso. And so that's a really unique situation. No matter what side of El Paso you're on, you're probably within a 15-minute drive of a park entrance somewhere. That gives us some really unique opportunities and also some challenges. So one of the challenges is that, well, it's both an opportunity and a challenge. There's access points all over this park. Unlike a lot of other parks that kind of have a one-way entrance, you stop at the ranger station and then you go to whatever area you're going to. You can get into Franklin Mountain State Park from our main visitor center. We have 2 entrances on the Ron Coleman Trail. We've got about 7 different trailheads outside of our main entrance area that have like points where you can get your entrance fee and stuff like that, and a couple others that are kind of unofficial or even more backcountry kind of situations. That means that we are open to a lot of people. It's easy to get to us, which is great as an opportunity, but it can also be a challenge, especially if you've got people coming out who are sometimes we do have people who treat the park a little bit more like they would just a regular city park. With the city park, you walk out there, you take a lap and you go home kind of thing. And some people can do that in the state park a little bit. They just walk out their front door, walk straight into the state park and, hike for a little while and then come back. And it can be difficult to manage that entry a little bit. We have a lot of unreported access to the park. So people will enter the park without purchasing their entrance fee or their entrance permits. And that is a little difficult for us because we're not able to show management the actual visitation that we're getting at the park. And we need more resources than it might look like we need on paper because some of our trails are seeing way more use than we actually have recorded. And we're working on getting the data for that. We're using trail counters and stuff like that to get some data, and
Yeah.
we're seeing like some areas of the park, we've got 1,000 people walking by there on a weekend, and that's not how many people are registering their visit. And so just kind of managing that use and making sure everyone is educated on how to use a state park and how it's a little different than walking into your local, your neighborhood park and, running around on the grass. You can't really interact with the state park in the same way because it is a natural space. We have sensitive ecological stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's potentially, like we said, yeah, you can't you can't go in unprepared. You have to have water with you. You have to know where you're going. You don't want to get on something longer or more difficult than you expected it to be, and that sort of thing. So it's a great opportunity. It's also a challenge, but I think it's a really unique situation where we are just honestly, the city kind of grew around the mountain. And then the mountain was protected as part of the state park. So just being that central kind of backbone of the city is really unique to us.
What is the entry fee for the park?
So the park entrance is $5 per adult, 13 years of age and older. And then if you wanted to get your annual pass, it's good at any Texas state park that you go to for 1 year and waives the entrance fees for the pass holder and anyone in a single vehicle with them. We also have cards if you're active duty service member, veteran, or
Yeah.
disabled veteran with a 60% or more service-connected disability. You can get those at the visitor center as well, which would waive. There's different rules for each of those, but yeah, there's different opportunities for that.
The park passes, it'll pay for itself with a couple of visits. So,
yeah. I tell whenever people are asking about the different passes, I'm like, hey, listen, if you and one other person are going to be coming to the park at least 7 times in a year, the park pass is worth it. If it's just yourself, but you're planning to come more than 14 times in a year, it's worth it. If you're just here for a weekend and you're not planning on coming back, pay the entrance fee.
yeah, and also, like, if you can't account for the number of people using the park, I mean, that impacts funding and resources and everything, and so everybody loses out at in the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I know that some of the folks who come out, they're entering from different areas of the park. Some of them actually do have park passes. They just didn't register their visit for the day. And many of the folks in El Paso are either active duty or veteran as well. They just need to come by and get their permit or get their pass that'll waive the fee for them. So we issue a lot of active duty passes, that's for sure.
So, how does the park connect to El Paso's history and culture?
There's a long and rich history of this park. So the area itself, it's people have been using this mountain range probably for the last 12,000 years. We don't have any like major permanent settlements up here on the mountain. If you think about it, looking at kind of the wider region, if you're going to build a permanent home, you're going to go down to the river close to sources of water. But we do have evidence of people coming up into the mountain to collect resources. Specifically, you've got our chert, which is like flint. We have evidence of people harvesting that to make arrowheads, dart points, knives, stone tools, all that sort of stuff, as well as hunting. And, the only place to get acorns is up here on the mountains. And so probably seasonally harvesting different sort of stuff. More into kind of the recorded history, we've had a lot of people using the mountain for mining and ranching operations. This area is not great farmland. It's way too rocky for that. But if you want to raise some goats, it's great for that. And so we have evidence of people using the park for various different ranching operations. As far as mining goes, we don't have a lot of really. We have a lot of small mining operations. And so it was like probably a rancher owned the land, got the mineral rights, and poked around a little bit to see what he could find. So we have these kind of short little exploratory mines dotted throughout the mountains. The main operation was on the east side of the mountain. We have the El Paso Tin Mining Company. They formed in 1909, produced tin for a few years, and then kind of dissolved into bankruptcy. So there's probably a lot of reasons for that. As far as we can tell, the ore that they were mining was high quality ore. It was just that the cost of extraction was too high to make a profit. However, they did keep that. There's the mines that are still out there that you can actually go explore. And then there was a building that they had where they were actually smelting the ore. And that was turned into a hospital, actually, for babies with infectious tuberculosis. And so basically, the dry air helped treat tuberculosis. And that was, a lot of like desert places, you have these TB hospitals that were built and that sort of stuff. I think there's one up at, isn't there like an old sanatorium up at Guadalupe Mountains somewhere? I know there's one up in Las Cruces in New
I'm not
Mexico.
sure.
Maybe not Guadalupe, but it was a sanatorium specifically for kids. Now, the actual more recent history of the park is really cool too. Our park is not a particularly old park. We formed in 1979. But the story behind it is really amazing. So at that time, the land that is currently the state park was owned by various different ranchers, miners, and developers. And so one developer in particular, his name was Dick Knapp. He owned a big portion of the park, or what is today the park, and he actually bulldozed a road going all the way up to the top of North Franklin Peak, which is the highest point in El Paso, and he actually flattened it off. So it is 8 feet shorter than it used to be. And basically, people saw the bulldozers. I've heard that it was actually originally some folks from the local Audubon Society. They were noticing that they weren't seeing as many golden eagles in the area. And so they came out to hike to see what was going on and saw the bulldozers and were very mad about this. Basically, the mountain itself is so iconic for El Paso, even for people who've never actually been up here on the mountain. It is the backdrop of the city. People use it to navigate by. They'll say like, oh, take that road in the direction of the mountain, and that sort of stuff is such an iconic part of El Paso. And all of a sudden, people realized that this was just private property that could actually be legally bulldozed at the time. And they came together, formed the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition, and they started working to petition the local government, the state government, to get protections in place for the mountain. And they did succeed in 1979. Texas legislature passed a bill forming Franklin Mountain State Park. It's a really unique kind of situation for how we formed. Most parks are stuff like somebody donated land to the state or something like that. Not many of them were formed through legislative action designating this park. And of those that were formed that way, even fewer of them were formed through the local community requesting that it be acquired. And so 79 is when the legislation was signed. And then over the next couple years, the land was purchased and then turned into the state park that we see today. And that's just such a cool story to me because it was the community who said, we want this area to be protected. And so to have that sort of community support is really amazing.
It kind of goes with, I've had Caprock on, Copper Breaks, and some other parks that have just received or have had or are trying to get their dark sky, and how the community, the local towns around the park are, on board to change the way the lighting in the streets are and stuff like that. So yeah, it's wonderful to hear and see what communities can do to help protect these wonderful natural areas that we have.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the park's conservation priorities?
So conservation priorities. For us, I would say that it's, like I said earlier, we are an entire mountain range. Chihuahuan is a mountain range. And that gives us some unique situations. First of all, we have lots of different, what we might call microhabitats or microclimates within the bounds of the park. Some of that is because of elevation differences. So we're going to see different communities up at the top of the mountain versus in the lowlands. And the fact that the park encompasses all of it gives us this really important kind of transitional ecosystem. So animals can select, they can move through the landscape and select for these different areas. We also have like the canyons create these little pockets of cooler, wetter places where we have more vegetation growing. The different sides of the mountain have different sorts of little microclimates and micro habitats. And that's a really unique thing that we try to protect. But I would say something, a lot of times what we're doing, we don't have a lot of like hands on, like we're going to restore this particular habitat. We function a lot more on protecting what's already in place and kind of allowing that natural process to restore those areas that have been damaged or degraded over time. And we do that a lot through education and making sure people understand where they're allowed to go, the reasoning for that, and the way that we build our trails, and just for us, it's important that people fall in love with this place and want to do the right thing and help, protect the land. And so I would say that's kind of our main focus when it comes to conservation, is maintaining what we have, having that buffer space between the park and the city as well. We consider kind of our edges to be like buffers. And the more the city grows, that pushes and displaces various different wildlife. And so we'll have, different like coyotes and fox and all these other sort of thing that might be pushed out of these residential places, but it has some place to go in the state park. So I'd say that's kind of our main focus when it comes to conservation. And then on top of that, we have our new project. Not sure if you want me to talk about this now or later, but we just reintroduced a herd of bighorn sheep to the park.
Oh,
It's the
wow.
first time probably in like 100 years that there's been bighorn sheep in the mountains. But that's been a really cool project that we're very excited about.
Nice, nice, nice. So, are there any areas in the park that are not open to public just for preservation reasons?
Yeah, so we have a couple areas that we've closed to the public. Most of them are near the Ron Trail, actually. In fact, the old trail has been completely closed off. The reason for this, this is a trail that was not built by park staff. This kind of got grandfathered in. Sometimes when people see something cool, they take a hike to it and they don't always take the
A lot of
best
time.
route. Yes. So this particular trail, it's a really cool trail. It's right off of a major highway, Highway 375, Trans Mountain Road. And so you can just kind of like park on the side of the highway and take this trail. And there's this cool rock formation up there that people like to get to. It's called the Mammoth. Some people call it the Elephant. Some people call it Gunsight. But it looks like a rock mammoth up on this side of the mountain. And the old trail kind of followed the ravine a little bit, or that went down the bottom of the canyon, but then you have to get up. And so there were like these tight switchbacks going up. And of course, whenever you have tight switchbacks, you have people who cut those switchbacks. And so it developed, instead of being these tight switchbacks up the mountain, the entire side of the mountain was just kind of like eroding, and there's like spider web trails of people trying to get around this. And it was just getting worse and worse. We were having worse and worse rescues in that area. And the lands, like the plants were basically all gone from this, hillside. And so we did completely close that area and built a new trail which crosses the canyon to the other side and uses the ridge in a much more natural kind of approach to the Mammoth. And so it's a much nicer trail. We are still having issues of people going off trail or even building their own trails, which, oh my gosh, I hate it so much. And so we are continuing to have those issues, but the new trail is much better than that old one. But we do have that entire canyon just completely closed to the public. We used to say in that area, if you go off trail, just be careful. but not anymore. It just took, it was too much. There was too much damage to the landscape, but there was also too many rescues. And the thing about the rescues in that area is that was where we had the really bad rescues. That's where we had
Yeah.
broken femurs and sliced Achilles tendons and, all that sort of stuff on the side of a cliff that our rescuers now have to figure out how to get to. And so it was dangerous for a rescue team to get up there. And so we just said, we're done. This area is closed to the public. There's also another area close by that I'm not going to be super specific about where it is. That's been closed for a long time. That's due to some sensitive archaeological stuff. We've got some petroglyphs down there that we unfortunately cannot really have open to the public.
Please do not open that to the public.
No. If you get special permission to go down and see them, there's these little bear claws and some other petroglyphs in the area, but you will also find a ton of graffiti petroglyphs. And so it's actually, people have gone down there and actually scratched their names and stuff like that into the rock next to these. And so it's actually, some of it's a little difficult to tell what is original and what is not. And so that's a protected area for the cultural reasons, not so much for the natural resources. But those would be the primary areas that are just completely closed to the public. Of course, we always prefer that people stay on the trails, but those are the areas where it's like, absolutely do not leave the trail at all.
I would be like, if they're calling for a rescue, and I'd be like, did you cut that switchback? You did? Click. All joking aside, the number of years that I've been at the Guads, because at first I'm like, okay, somebody cuts a switchback. Like, it didn't bother me. I didn't do it, but I was like, oh, whatever. But over the years, I've seen that switchback, how it just grows and grows and grows. And then you're looking at slides and you can see where
it starts digging into the trail and you start losing the trail. Basically what happens is once somebody cuts that switchback, especially out here in the desert, everything out here grows really slowly. We don't have a lot of water. We don't have super nutrient dense soils. Everything grows really slowly. So if you walk on vegetation and it dies, it's not coming back real fast. It's going to take a long time to recover. So if you have people walking on this area, you have that vegetation that's not going to survive. And those roots are what's anchoring that hillside. And so you have that loss of structural support from the root systems, but then you also have the trail itself basically becomes a waterway. And, water will always take the path of least resistance. And so if you've created a trail that basically goes straight downhill, which is what most of the switchback cuts do, you're going to have water just going straight down that trail. And it's going to be fast moving water that picks up more of that dirt and rock. And it's just going to cut out the side of the mountain. The purpose of switchbacks, in addition to just being safer, is also to redirect water. So we build them such that water kind of sheets off the side of the trail, but also slows down so it's not building up speed and taking away that dirt and rock with it. So it's very intentional how we build those trails. And the switchback cuts do not fit into that system at all, and it counteracts it.
It destroys it. And, that and dumping orange pills on the trail. And man, that's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode.
So you said, I think a second ago, there are 128 miles in the park. And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.